I'm Dave Hunkley, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Finzly. And today we'll introduce Finzly Flow, which is the modern way to open up accounts digitally. We'll start this by giving you some background based on the data that we see in the industry on why this is so important to take action upon now. And then Alfred White, who's with me as well, he leads digital transformation and works with organizations on digital account opening. Alfred will drive a demonstration of the solution, so you'll be able to see that. And then we'll save the last 7 or 8 minutes for questions and also to have a discussion about what next steps might look like for your credit union. So we'll jump right in. All right. First off, if we think about where we are in terms of loyalty to financial institutions, this is a bank rate study that says that the average checking account holder holds their account for more than 14 years. And it was said a few years ago that millennials would be more fickle and they would switch their relationships more frequently based on a better experience or a better fee structure or anything like that. And what the data is actually showing is that millennials too are holding on to their accounts for a very long time. So it's really important that if we want to establish the critical operating accounts or the primary checking account relationships with members, that we have a way to do so by engaging them digitally at the time that they're trying to open up their account relationships. And the cause for concern, there was a study done by Cornerstone Advisors that has looked over a period of time. They've gone back to pre-2017 levels, and they looked at the early part of the pandemic last year. And in Q2 of 2020, 69% of all the checking accounts that were opened up in the US were done so through mega banks and digital banks. And when you think about credit unions, that number was 8%. What's really disturbing about the 8% is that's actually down from 2017 levels, which were at 18%. And so we think there's a reason to take action. The second thing that we see is of all the primary accounts that are being opened right now, 64% of those are happening digitally, and 75% of secondary accounts are happening digitally. And there's a reason why that is. If most folks that are using digital means are saying, I want my institution to know me. And so when I come back for a second account, I don't have to enter all that information all over again. We pick up where we left off in terms of what they already know. And I only have to provide the information that's specific to the new account that I'm opening. And that's critically important to the workflow and the convenience and getting your members across the line in terms of signing up for new accounts digitally. The stat on the bottom is something I've been tracking for a number of years. And if you were to look 5 to 7 years ago, this number would have been about 35%. 35% of the consumers would have said they would choose their financial institution based on the customer experience. And what we're seeing now is 53% of consumers saying they do prefer the service of a digital institution. Now, they're not just talking about a digital only institution. They're saying they're looking for the digital services of their institution, and that would be their preferred method of engaging with an institution. So when we hear from members, we talk to them and they say, look, what we're really looking for is the convenience. The account holders want to be able to have access, and certainly during COVID, that raised the bar a bit in terms of not being able to physically go into a branch. And so looking for the digital channels as the alternative was the right thing to do. The simplicity of workflows is really important. And so we've taken a look at solutions that have been in the market a while, and we've talked to institutions about where their clients and their members are struggling. And one of the areas is the workflows are just too complicated, or the member never understands where they are in the process. And so they don't know how complicated or how easy it's going to be until they actually go through the process. We hear a lot about wanting guidance on what is the best way to do this and what should I be thinking about next. And so if you can prepare the member as they're going through the process to let them know, especially on a commercial account, let them know these are 3 pieces of information you're going to need before you start the process. That creates a far more engaging experience and a less frustrating experience. And it also reduces the abandonment rate. The next is around smart pre-population, which is part of that driver to why 75% of secondary accounts are being opened digitally. It's because the data is already there and it's very quick and easy to do. Outside of the banking context, Apple and their partnership with Goldman Sachs and rolling out their Apple Card they can open up a credit line on a credit card in about 90 seconds. And that's a function of them having all the information with the exception of your income level and your social security number. Everything else they already know about you through your Apple ID or through your phone records. And so they're just asking you for confirmation versus having to gather all of that data during the account opening process. The last thing is around immediate access. What we find are folks that say, I really want to have access online to my account. And so the account holders are saying, my account's really only open when I can see it digitally online. And so that's really important to keep in mind as we go. So the problem with existing solutions, the number one challenge that we've heard time and time again is I bought a solution, it's on older technology. That older technology doesn't support the flexibility that I need. So when things change, when a PPP loan comes around, I don't have a way to be able to approach that problem. When the rules change and I need to apply more security controls, I don't have the ability to insert that without looking for a new solution. So that's really important. The fraud control issue is really important too, and you have to get that right when you roll these solutions out. And Finzly has done a really nice job of investing in that area to make sure that we're taking advantage of the latest technologies and also putting the institution in control of making decisions that allow you to take steps manually when you need to, but let other things be automated when it's appropriate to automate. There is too much manual intervention. We've worked with institutions who are typically touching all the applications manually. That's not a bad thing. As a way to get started, it's great to have a digital experience for your members so they can open the account. You can get started today by just doing that. And then over time, you can start to introduce the points of integration where you can automate the process as you get more comfortable with the solution. So it's not a bad approach, but at the end of the day, you want to be in a position where you have more automation, not less, and that can help drive better results with your account holders. The abandonment rates were always an issue in this space, and a lot of that had to do with the complexity of the workflow, the language that was being used, and that point of being inflexible that I mentioned earlier. And lastly, one of the challenges is you want to make sure that you have active accounts on your core because you have to pay your core and other third parties for that account. So having account holders that are putting their primary checking relationship with you and they've had their direct deposit of payroll set up with you, that's going to keep those relationships, primary relationships, and it creates better economics for your credit union as well. Okay, just a couple more things. I'm going to turn it over to Al. The customer experience, if you think about traditional channels on the left, it could take hours just to go through the branch process of setting up accounts, but it actually takes weeks by the time that customer walks away with their folder that says, I have a new checking account, and they have to go on their own and set up online banking and set up other services that they need. Versus in the Finzly model, it is truly possible to be able to capture that application digitally, complete all the KYC and funding, and also to be able to trigger the downstream activities inside your institution so that you can issue debit cards, you can enroll in online banking, and actually drive the setup of direct deposits coming into that new account. So the last piece on the Finzly side, and then we'll turn it over to Al, is if you were thinking about total integration, where we would integrate to your core, we would integrate to your online banking provider so that there would be a link to be able to open up an account from your online banking provider. And we would provide the e-signature services. We would provide the ID verification services. All of that other stuff would be native to the application. Those are typically 90-day implementations when we're integrating to new solutions and new cores. Otherwise, if we've already done the integration once with a core, then it's typically a 60-day variety. So the bright spot in all of this, if you were thinking about getting started immediately, there could be probably a 30-day implementation if you said, all I want to do is be able to capture that application process digitally and get it into my back office. And then I can handle that manually initially, and then I'll move toward automation over time. So those are the things we'll want to talk about on the back end of the call. I will turn it over to Al now. He'll drive a demo. I would encourage you to use the chat on the lower portion of your screen, and you can introduce questions that you might have. I'll monitor those as Al goes, and then we can visit those at the end of our discussion. Over to you, Al.
Hey, thanks, Dave. And good morning, fellow credit union leaders. Hope you're all doing well and safe. So today I'll walk through the Finzly platform and how we have really utilized the latest and greatest of technology to deliver to financial institutions. So I initially want to start with the understanding of how we look at building these applications and the configuration and the ease of use of the Finzly platform. So what you're looking at is the back end where we would build the form that we would utilize for the application. And just to give some examples here, we can start to build the attributes of that application. So having a welcome page, having a personal information page, and then as we go along, we can add additional steps to that form. So if for some reason we decided to change the application, add in a third step, sorry for my long typing, or even look at reordering the process, we can do so. So as you can see, we can capture eligibility requirements now as a second step, or we can move it to a third step. There's no code and very low code up on the platform. So we've got the ability to then enter in all of the necessary attributes of each actual form. So capturing check boxes, capturing text to gather requirements. We even have the ability to upload files, add a bank account where you can register your bank account, and add e-signature where applicable. So once you have actually designed and configured, the processes, you would actually click Save Form, and what you would see is the actual application experience that you could then publish on your website and make available for members via mobile and via traditional digital channels. So what you're viewing is a mocked up demonstration of the application, and I'm just going to walk through it. First thing I'm going to do is enter in my phone number, and what it's going to do is pass over a token to my mobile phone where I will enter a one-time passcode. Why is this important? One might ask, we are verifying that you are saying that this is your mobile device, that you are who you are, and it's the first instance of where we really start to tackle some of the fraud controls that we see out there. So I'm going to enter in that authentic passcode that was passed to my mobile phone, and then we will start to capture some of the information that is most particular to us. So things like, what is your first name? What is your last name? Whether you're a U.S. citizen, and then the ability to actually choose the type of product offerings that your credit union would offer to that member. So one thing to note is we would configure and have the product availability, even if you had specific names for different product offerings, as well as the ability to do multi-product selection as well. So being able to grab that checking and money market savings within the same application experience instead of having to submit two applications. Once I've done that, you will see within the process, we begin to do the verification of identity. So what we would do is actually upload via our mobile or via our laptop or desktop the front and back of our driver's license. And then just as a precautionary step, we have the ability to capture a selfie. And why that's important, and it won't let me capture my picture today for some reason, but why that typically is important is we're doing a couple of things, and we've partnered with Ideology to provide some fraud verification of identity for that consumer. So the first thing is it's going to look at the picture on the driver's license and the selfie that that member would take and ensure that that is the same person. It's also going to validate that this is a real driver's license. And then the third thing is it's taking all of the necessary information off of that driver's license and inputting it into the application. So when Dave talked about the timeline to actually getting a completed application, this is one of the things that edges that time, reducing the amount of input that that member has to actually keystroke or thumb in. Now we're supplying that information in the application off of the driver's license. These fields can be locked down so that whatever is scraped off and inputted is exact information. Or in the instance of maybe I moved within the last 10 days and my driver's license is not updated, I can go in and edit that information. But as a member, you will see that there are only a couple of additional pieces of information that we would have to enter before moving on in this application, making the experience seamless. And then the third case of, again, identity verification and really reducing fraud is passing these out-of-wallet questions. So Ideology is going to do a vet check and return questions that the member would answer to ensure that they are indeed who they say they are. We can capture the employment information. Why is that important? You begin to know your customer. And so they can enter in their occupation and any other necessary particulars or requirements that you want. As you can see, we've got the ability to expand fields, so dynamically rendering them as the consumer or member goes along. So once I grabbed employed, the employer and occupation fields were applied here. In the instance where maybe your credit union, you're working with employers to capture the employees on site, we've got the ability to do bank at work programs or credit union at work programs. And then, as you can see, just flowing through the application, all of your standard compliance that we would need to vet with that member. And last, we come to funding. So being able to fund this account real time through the experience. Dave mentioned, the integration with the core. So as the funding is completed, we're passing all of that information to the core in an automated fashion. But we partner with Plaid, where this member has the ability to actually log in to their external account, validate that account, enter in the requirements here, and actually have that account funded right here real time. So now that my check-in has come over, I can select which accounts I actually want to fund from. I can put in the required funding amount. In both of the accounts that I'm applying for. And then we move through the final step of all of the disclosures that the credit union would want to provide. So the first thing that we do is provide an e-sign disclosure, ensuring that they are have the ability, the member has the ability to actually open and read a PDF. Once they have entered in the code and done the acceptance of the e-sign, we've got your standard add-on. So we can offer overdraft protection. You can see here that based upon the product selection of the checking and money market savings, all of the required new account disclosures and truth in savings disclosures have displayed. You can have each of these links PDF'd out where they can review the disclosures and then do acknowledgement of those disclosures upon reading them all. And then last is the electronic signature, right? So capturing that digital signature for the customer, really streamlining the process. And then once they have submitted all of that information, the account has now been successfully enrolled and successfully funded. So you've got a full completed account. The next step would be the integration that we would do with your online banking provider, where if that net new member did not already have online banking access, they could then enroll real time with the completion of that application. And then the final thing, and what we've heard out in the market that's really important to consumers, is I'm establishing this bank account because I'm either starting a new job or transferring jobs, and I need to set up my direct deposit. So because we are doing all of this real time, we've got the ability to return to that member their checking account number, routing number, and they can print that off and take that directly to their employer so that they can get their checking account validated with their employer for direct deposit for their upcoming paycheck. The last thing that I will display is the ability to get all of the reporting on the back end. So when we think about the users within your respective credit union, really being able to get transparency and visibility into the accounts that you are providing online. So first is the reporting on all of the accounts that are coming in, whether they're being processed. If you've got a fully automated process, how many are being completed? You can track those daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually. But then actually coming in and getting more granular. So we can look at a completed application and actually go in and see all of the information that was submitted by that member and ensure that, meeting compliance standards and any other regulatory or operational standards, that this application is fully complete before offshoring it to our core and document retention area. Additionally, if you have a low touch scenario in which you're bringing it into an operations or into a branch, and you want to have someone give it a second set of eyes before it's fully completed, we've got the ability for you to actually review that application, then approve, reject, or actually return that to the customer or member so that they can fill in the additional information. Why is that important? The most important piece is the abandonment rate and the incomplete applications. We understand that those actually, they create a lot of expense for financial institutions. So we're trying to create an opportunity where you can collaborate with your prospective member to ensure that that relationship is fully completed. Additional operation aspects are you can track full activity. So for auditing purposes, you can see everything that's been done, person, date, and timestamp. You've got the ability to add attachments or receive attachments where applicable. And you can also place comments. So as you're doing due diligence, if comments need to be made amongst team members internally, you can track those comments right on that active application. And then the final thing that I'll notice is the way that we process and give transparency to the inbound applications for reporting. So you can see that you can track those that are in processing, those that are in error, and go and get more granularity, see those that have been completed, and see those that have been abandoned. And then Dave, in just a moment, once I complete, if you want to talk about the abandoned applications and how we work with a partner to actually help the credit unions in fulfilling that, I'd greatly appreciate it. But the one last thing that I'll highlight is we've got the ability to provide those consumer accounts, those business accounts, and we've even got the ability with this native workflow to do small dollar loans. So we can provide all of the product sets that your credit union would need with this streamlined workflow and help you really drive business out into the communities in which you serve. Dave, back to you.
Sure, thank you. And there's quite a bit behind this in terms of the orchestration of the workflow with visual tools that allow us to very quickly be able to adapt and insert new steps in the workflow. As technology changes over time, an investment in a solution doesn't decline, because if security changes and you need to introduce a different third party than what's in place today, you can pull out one third party, insert the other one, and that all can be done visually through the workflow composer. So very interesting there. Al had mentioned the point on how can we help clients reduce the abandonment rate. We have a partnership with a company called Finzly, which allows you to do co-browse. So from a customer service perspective, if you had a commercial member who was trying to open a commercial account, they're stuck, they don't really understand what it is they need to do, you would be able to engage in co-browse with them, see exactly what they're seeing on the screen, and work them through the rest of that application process. So everything you saw here today, while we are definitely fans of automate as much as you possibly can in a process, a lot of times that can be concerning to folks when you think about getting started. Everything you saw here today, you can think of as dials that you can turn up or down. So if you roll this out day one, you could start by capturing a digital application from your clients, and you could work through your current process as an institution to complete that application process. That could be the first thing that you do. As you progress and as you get more comfortable with the solution, you can start to recognize that you don't want to have to touch each one of these applications, and you'll be more comfortable with more automation. And so you can start to change the dials a bit, if you will, so that you can let more and more of those applications that are qualified, that are fully vetted, you can let those go straight through. As you consider the different things that you want to enable in an automated form, as we talked about through this demonstration, automating funding, automating debit cards, automating online banking enrollment, all those can be part of the equation. If you're not comfortable doing that day one, you don't have to do that day one. If you are comfortable doing that day one, Finzly's prepared to make that happen for you. So I know we have just about 3 minutes left. I will open it up for questions, and then we can close out the session. Are there any questions? And if you do have a question, you can either enter it in the chat or you can turn on your microphone, because I think everyone is probably muted at this point. And Lori, do you have any comments or feedback as well?
No, I think it was an excellent presentation, and we really thank you for, doing this for us today. We do have a question from Dee.
Yes, I see. D, have you integrated with Fiserv? We've done Fiserv and a lot of FIS variations in other products that we have in Finzly. Right now with digital account opening, we've done FIS integrations. We haven't done the Fiserv integration there, but we're very familiar with integrating to Fiserv in a variety of ways. Some of those are through SOAP XML interfaces and direct connections. Some for institutions that have Fiserv Communicator, we're able to leverage their APIs and integrate that way. So integration, I know a lot of institutions are concerned about, have you done this before with my core? I can tell you that Finzly has never had an obstacle integrating to anyone's core. It takes cooperation with working with the institution and also working with your core provider, but it's definitely possible to be able to integrate to your core.
Thank you.
And the same question with Portico. One of the things we've talked to Howard about through CU Evolution is we think this is technology that could be applied to all the CU Evolution members. And if you were interested in looking at that as an option, if we have multiple institutions that say, yes, we're on the same core, would love to go next, we could do deployments one at a time, or we could do them in waves. If we do them in waves, there's an economic advantage that we're able to pass along that makes it a little bit more affordable for anybody that's involved. So we would love to follow up in the chat. If you scroll up, you'll see Al's contact information and my contact information. If you don't mind, we'll just reach out just to check in and see if you had any direct feedback you wanted to share. And we thank you for joining us today.
Yes, and a huge thank you to Lori and team at CU Evolution for the opportunity of doing this webinar. We look forward to many more.
Indeed. Thank you, Lori. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you.